Dawson Rider Wiki.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here. This is going to be my review for the Beyond the Grid Deluxe Edition. If you are not familiar, they always compile all the major arcs into these hardcover collections once they've completed, and you get like the original 2 arcs, and then we had Shattered Grid, and then obviously now Beyond the Grid, and it's obviously, like I said, a hardcover, and it's usually themed around one of the Rangers it centers around, and since Ranger Slayer was kind of the lead character, leader of this arc, it's Ranger Slayer based. And so just to talk about the general quality of the book, just like all the others, just speaking of the actual book itself and not the contents, I really like these. You know, whenever I read comics, I've always been a person that likes to get the hardcover big collection because I think they look cooler and I like having everything in one place rather than a bunch of different issues unless I like certain covers. So I've always been a fan of these in general, and not to mention I think these are really cool. I love the style of them with the helmet and just the way they look all lined up, you know, with the other ones with red and green and Draken, and I really like this. The quality is nice so long as they ship it to you properly. They kind of messed mine up a little bit. They didn't wrap it up, so I've got some dents, so be careful with that. I got it on Amazon. And you know, the quality of the pages is nice and all that stuff. You get the entire Beyond the Grid arc, you get the 25th anniversary special, you get a bonus story, and as always at the end you also get the nice cover gallery of all the covers that released during this, which is really cool. So if you're not so much about collecting the covers for collectability but you just liked the art, it's all combined in there. So these are really nice, high quality. I really like them as a collector just in terms of the quality of the book itself. Now to talk about the contents, I have already reviewed the Beyond the Grid arc, but I will talk about my thoughts on it a little bit since obviously that's what's in here. And then there was also the bonus story, which I will touch on briefly. But Beyond the Grid was a very disappointing arc for me. I was really excited for it because Shattered Grid was so good, and it was really exciting that they went with this concept to follow Shattered Grid, like not diving right back into Mighty Morphin. We picked Rangers from all different series, and I'll say that I don't necessarily think it was awful, it was just off. Like, everything about it was just kind of off. Like, from the art, some of the art was cool. For me, some of it was a little mixed. That's kind of subjective, but so much of it felt warped and weird. So many of it constantly felt like someone was taking a vacuum to it and their faces were stretched, and then you had the famous, like, I'll tell you what, heckle look. And it was just, even that was off for me. And the dialogue in it was so strange, like, just the person-to-person speaking. That's what dialogue is. But I'm talking about not just the storytelling, but just the dialogue between characters felt very off and not childish, but just amateur. Like, there was parts where like, hey Kim, remember when we were both bad guys because we were bad? That's why we're bonding. Remember when I did like bad stuff? And it was just so cringy. And there was some really cool ideas in this though, to give this story credit. I think this had some really, really cool concepts, which is why it was so disappointing, because it was filled with cool concepts from the general premise to the character setup to the lore it added. It had so many cool ideas, just not all of it was executed right. And it felt like it was very rushed at the end. And they felt like they had so much time that they could have fleshed out the ideas they presented at the end, and there was a lot of wasted opportunities because not only did they have these like 6 characters in here, but they had a whole bunch of other Rangers on the ship they never knew what to do with. It just felt off and kind of a mess for me personally. Some people think it's a little bit overhated, like it's one of those things that's cool to hate on, and I wouldn't necessarily say that. Like, I'm not trying to dislike this, and I don't hate it either. Like I said, I think it has some really cool ideas and some enjoyable moments, and I love the Solar Rangers and their designs, but it was just so off and strange. I'm going to revisit it and possibly do a revisit review. I thought about doing it for this, but I didn't want to rush it just for this review since there's so many other things to cover. I want to sort of take my time and take it in and see if anything things change, so expect that at some point in the future. But as of right now, I think it was just a very off arc with some really cool ideas. I think if you're interested in it though, I think it's at least worth checking out because it does have some really cool lore additions to it. You know, if you don't want to lay down the money for this, or you don't care about getting the collector's guide and completing your collection of all the stories, maybe check out the digital versions, or they have the paperback ones that are a little bit cheaper to get. So even though it's not personally for me as much, I can definitely recommend giving it a check out because I think it's got some really cool ideas. In fact, I'd love to see some of the ideas and characters revisited, maybe under some different writers. That's kind of my recommendation there. But if you're like me and you're completionists and you want to get all the stories and you like these, I can recommend this quality hardcover that compiles everything you'll need, and I like having all these stories together and all the covers and everything. Now, just to end off, just to quickly talk about the bonus story, it really wasn't the most exciting bonus story. It was basically just a little bit of a backstory, flesh out story for the Solar Ranger and Remy. It kind of took us through their first meeting and through their relationship, through the time they were living in this dimension. And then there's one panel at the end that talks about them beyond the grid, like after Beyond the Grid rather, excuse me. And it was a nice, sweet little story. I wasn't that into it, you know, I was kind of hoping for something a little bit more just because, like I said, Beyond the Grid was a little bit disappointing, and I was thinking maybe they'll give us a really cool bonus story. But if you're into these two characters and their relationship, I think you'll find it enjoyable, but it was just kind of okay for me. But it's always nice that we get at least a little bit of a bonus thing there. But that's about it for this one, guys. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you can use them from my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.